we left off with the Humvee imported. We used a DataSmith import to bring this Humvee into the scene. And we can see that none of the materials came across, right? So we imported the DataSmith project into the Humvee folder that we created, which then created a Humvee folder. So maybe I didn't need to complete that step, but regardless, we have it. And then we have the geometry, which is comprised of the body, the wheels, and some of the components. And then we have materials that were created. So 4 different materials that were created that correspond to the body of the Humvee. And so the advantage of some of these assets coming in from Sketchfab is that these are already mapped for us. And so we just need to apply that texture to the material in order for the mapped model to recognize and apply the material correctly, right? So it should all work, but it does require a little bit of extra room and extra work, and that's what I'm about to show you now. So one thing that might be helpful to visualize some of this is to know which of the 4 materials responds or corresponds to which part of the vehicle, right? So if I open this material in Unreal Engine by double-clicking it, I can create, or I can sort of see what's in it. And there's a lot of stuff. I'm not quite sure what any of this is, but it doesn't really matter at this point. We're gonna just apply the maps to it, and so we could probably delete all of that stuff, right? So I'm basically gonna take a color, right? And this is just a vector, which means 3 values, X, Y, Z, and RGB, that's going to designate a color. So remember I said X is red, Y is green, and Z is blue. Everything, all the colors are a combination of those 3 values. And so I could just type vector, I could do a vector parameter, or I think it's just constant 3 vector, right? So 0, 0, 0 is 0 for red, 0 for green, and 0 for blue, which corresponds to black, right? But I can sort of designate any color that I want, right? Just pump up these values. And if I hit OK, we can see these numbers change and the color changes, right? So I'm going to apply this color to my base color. I'm going to hit apply. And I'm going to close that material. And we're going to see, OK, so this material applied to the wheels, right? And I'm going to do the same for all of these. So right click, constant 3 vector, attach it. And I'm going to give it a different color. And this is just so I can recognize or see which color corresponds to what part. So we're going to have something like a bubblegum Humvee. Maybe that's cool. Right? Okay, so here it is. It's the lights on this material. And I'm going to do the same. Constant 3 vector. Pick a color, double click on it, and maybe I'll go towards the green, hit OK, and I'm applying it again to the base color, right? And so that corresponds to the body, and so we don't even need to do the last one. The last one is just corresponding to the windshield and the glass on the Humvee. Okay? So that's step 1, right? So if you recall from the last tutorial, in addition to the geometry, we got these texture files, right? And as it turns out, these texture files came in as a DDS file. I can't even remember what DDS stands for, and it's not a commonly used file, what do you call it? File extension. And it's not one that's recognized, more importantly, by Unreal Engine, right? It has definitely been used for like gaming and creating assets, but maybe it's like an older file type that's no longer used. And so what I had to do was I had to go into the NVIDIA website, and I downloaded a plugin for Photoshop that allows me to read this file, right? The other thing you could do is go into a Google search and just type DDS converter or .dds file converter, or you find a lot of these online applets that can convert file types, and it works pretty well for image files. And so what I did was I dragged in, right, convert more files. I can drag in right, I can drag in this DDS file and then tell it to convert it to a PNG or a Targa, right, or a TIFF, right? These are the file types that Unreal kind of reads best, even SVG, but TIFF or Targa and PNG are preferred, right? And so I went ahead and did that. And so if we go into my downloads folder, we can see that we have these texture files as well, right? So there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? I can download the plugin for Photoshop, which then allows me to open this texture map onto in Photoshop, and then I can just save this out as a PNG or a Targa file, or I can convert it online. And so if we go to the textures, I can just right click here and create a new folder. I'm just going to call this PNG. And then I could paste these images. It's not recognizing it. So let's go back to the downloads. I'm going to cut and paste. Right. And so now I have these PNG texture files. Right. And so, maybe this is easier since I already converted it, but feel free to use either method. Right. So now within my materials, what I can do is create a new folder. And I'm going to call this textures. And I can just drag these directly in. I'm missing a few, so let's go back. There's 8 here. There's 8 here, so maybe copy all of them over. Actually, I think I have all of them. Right. And so let's start with the body because it's going to be the most dramatic one. So let's just go with that. Right. But we can start to recognize, this is probably the wheels. And you can start to see within it parts of the model that have been flattened out onto a 2D texture image. And so what this process entails is what we've been talking about with UVW maps, where this is the gift wrap, right? This is the wrapping paper. And somewhere, someone in 3ds Max or whatever software that they were using designated the parts of the geometry of the model corresponds to these various areas of this square texture file, so that the computer knows where to apply these images onto the surfaces of the model, right? And so this is how materials are typically applied in these types of gaming environments, right? And so now I can go back to my materials. So now I've designated this blue color or teal or whatever you want to call it to the Humvee body. So let's open that material. I'm going to go into this texture folder, and I'm going to drag this texture into my scene. And this actually is a normal map. And so I'm going to assign it to the normal channel. But it looks like I am missing a texture. And so let's go back to our folder here. And it looks like I'm missing texture 1. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm just missing that one. And I don't know why. Maybe I just didn't convert that. So if I go down and see if I can find texture 1. Wasn't done. So the good news is I just dragged it into Photoshop and I do have that plugin. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this as a PNG file. And go in here and click save. And hit OK. Okay, so we're doing a little bit of a mix and match here. So now if I go into my PNG converter, I can grab this texture, drag it into my Unreal Engine, and now I can drag this into the material, right? And instead of using the blue or teal color, I'm going to apply this texture to the base color and apply this normal map to the normal channel and hit apply. And hopefully this will map onto my model appropriate, which it does, right? So the parts correspond to the appropriate parts of the geometry in the model. There's some weird sort of line artifacts happening. I'm not sure why that's the case, but let's go ahead and continue that process on the other materials, right? So let's do the wheels next. And then go into the textures folder, and this looks like it's the wheel, right? So this is a wheel diffuse or base color. And you kind of know it is because it's going to be the one with the most color information, right? We don't need this anymore, right? If you see one that's black and white like this is usually a either the roughness or specular map. So it's just black and white data that will indicate whether something is shiny or not shiny, right? You can start to see the preview of what this is. So let's try doing this in specular and Alt-click to unlink roughness. And I think maybe the roughness looks better with this. And this also has a normal map, right? And you know it's a normal map because it's got like this sort of bluish, purplish, violet-y color. And we could talk more about what normal maps are later if you don't already know. But it's just a way of tricking the computer and the lighting calculation to think that there's more geometry than there actually is, right? So I'm going to hit OK and apply and close, and then we could see that our wheels have now been mapped with the proper texture, right? And because the UVW mapping was already done, we don't really need to do anything except tell this material what map or what texture to use, and it's going to, as long as the person who created this model unwrapped the UVWs correctly, it's going to come through correctly, okay? And so let's just do it with the lights now. Go back to the textures, right? This is going to be our base color. So I'm going to link that, and we have a normal. And I'm going to link that and hit apply. And I think that's it for this. And so we can see like our headlights now have textures on them. And then I'm going to do the final material, which is the glass. And so this looks like it's the base color. And then this looks like it's a normal map. I'm gonna hit apply. Right. I'm gonna uncheck these because I don't really think I need to have any values for this. If I want the glass to look shiny, maybe I do want to add right? So roughness and specularity. Roughness is like shininess, right? Or the opposite of shininess. So a roughness of 1 means it's not shiny. If I take this down to 0.3 and hit apply, you'll see that it becomes shinier and shinier. But it is. If I did roughness of 0, it's going to be a mirrored surface, right? And you can see that the effect is much stronger when it's 0. So maybe we need to do something in between. Let's try 0.5. So maybe that looks okay. So that's basically how we map this thing. Another thing to note is once you have the texture file, you can start to augment it in a way, however you might want to, right? So like if I want to take this and maybe it's a Yale Humvee or something like that, right? I can start trying to make certain adjustments. And so let's just make some simple adjustments and change the hue and saturation. See if we can sort of tint this onto the blue, right? So this makes it a little bit, or makes it blue. And you know, I might find some additional graphics, right? Yeah, here we go. And we'll get some transparency. So like, then I can take this, hopefully this is a PNG file. I can save this image as. Let's find our textures. And I'm just going to go in here and add this. And in Photoshop, I'm going to open this. So I don't think this is an actual transparent file. So let's just use a magic wand tool these days. So I'm just, you know, you would probably do a much better job of this than I would, but I'm just going to take the magic wand tool to copy just these elements and bring this in. And I can just start to use, right? Use imagery. Maybe I'll make this on a multiply layer so some of the information goes through. I might reduce the opacity ever so slightly. So it might look painted. I might like scratch it up too if I wanted to. And then let's find the hood. It looks like what they did, which is a clever little trick, is to just do half of it so that the other half of the texture is exactly the same. And you're using the same texture file, so you get more pixels. And so it's just, that's a way of being more efficient. So I'm not going to put it on the hood because of that. Oops. go around here. I want that bulldog to appear on the back here. So let's look for that in our Photoshop image as well. Looks like it's there. Let's do this by 90 degrees. Now, maybe it's just, you know, what's going to happen is I'll see two of them. And so, right? This is just an example. So I can flatten this image out, or I can just do a save as. Textures, PNG. You have to hit save copy now to access these other file types of PNG. I'm going to hit Y. I'm giving it a different file name. So now if I go back into my Unreal Engine, go to my textures, what I can do is I can just go to re-import with a new file, right? Or I can just import that file all over it. So I have two textures. I'm just going to re-import with a new file and select the one that I picked. And then you can start to see that it's updated, right? My texture. And now, you know, it's blue. It has the bulldog, and so it starts to, you know, maybe become a little bit customized to what we're trying to do, right? And again, this is a sort of fun, creative side of things. You can play with these textures as long as you're painting onto the textures, and you can recognize where, after you paint them, those images are going to appear on the model, right? You can have pretty, you'll have pretty good control over the appearance of some of these things, right? So this is how I would deal with models that I've downloaded from something like Sketchfab or Turbo Squid or CG Trader, right? There's a list of links to these tutorials, and within there, I also added the links to some of these websites that you can get assets from, right? Another really good source for free stuff is in the Unreal Engine Marketplace. And this is where people can develop models and essentially sell it. Again, I don't think the goal here is to get or to purchase assets, but you could probably find quite a bit of things, quite a lot of things rather, from these free assets, right? So like this truck is free. Some of these, again, like I don't want you guys to all militarize your scenes or anything, but these are the things you tend to find in video game asset stores, and robots and trucks, and what's that? Channing Tatum or something. So you just kind of have to look for things, especially, but that's why those reference images come into play, right? So once you start your reference images and you know what you're looking for, it's going to make this process a lot smoother. The other thing, if you look at free for the month, this is stuff that Epic Games buys and then offers for free. So you might find some assets, for instance, in like this modular industrial area that will work well in your scene. And you could look through these things, and then there's also Epic Games content. And so this is just free things that are available that Epic Games either has owned or owns or has developed, but they're available for you to use in your scenes. And then if you go to the library, if you scroll to the bottom, you have what's called your vault. And these are the things that you've downloaded that are available to you to use. Either you install it to an engine in the case of a plugin, or you can add some of these things to your projects. And a lot of that stuff, all of that stuff you'll find in the market. Let's just do this. I'm going to add to cart. You just have to go through the checkout. Don't purchase anything. And it looks like I found some rocks in the quarry collection, right? And then I'm going to hit checkout. You're not going to have to pay for anything because it's free. But it does go through that process, place order, and then it says thank you. And then if we go to our library and scroll down to the vault, hopefully we see it here. So one was the quarry. Let's go down to Q. You can see I've found a lot of stuff over the time. So here's our quarry collection. So if I have a project and I want to add these assets to it, I can click on this and it'll import these assets in.